following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome. Today we're visiting a local farm in Hollis, New Hampshire, which is loaded with autumn joy. No, it's not about the sedum plant called autumn joy, but rather about some of the bountiful harvest we are so fortunate to live with here in New England, and graciously supplied by Mother Nature's colorful autumn palette. We'll check out this year's apple crop and also visit with some very talented pumpkin carvers. They really have their work cut out for them. After all, it wouldn't be autumn without pumpkins, now would it? So come along for another exciting adventure beyond the garden gate. Hello, I'm Linda Temporino, and today we're out in Hollis at Lull Farm, and guess what time of the year it is? It's autumn, can't you tell? We're surrounded with pumpkins and squash, and we still have a little bit of corn over there, and the chrysanthemums, and I can smell apples from up the hill on the apple press, the cider press, and we'll be checking that out in a little while as well. So, do you know the difference between a squash and a pumpkin? The story is all in the stem. The stem on a pumpkin has 5 points to it, and on a squash, the stem is round. That's your lesson for the day. So come along and join us inside, and we'll check with Farmer Dave, and we'll see what he knows about apples, and I suspect it's quite a bit. Well, we've moved inside to Apple Land, and this is Dave Ord. He has joined us. He is the owner of Lull Farm. Thanks for joining us, Dave. It's been, couldn't have asked for a better day for weather-wise.
Beautiful day today, yes.
So tell me, how long have you been here at Lull Farm?
I started the farm, I leased the farm in 1980 from Gracie Lull, and as the dairy industry was crashing in Hollis, we started renting land and grew from the 14 acre apple orchard we have here to presently farming about 400 acres of land.
Wow. So, but you lease a lot of the land.
Lease a lot of the land, yes. Yes, we lease a lot of land.
Yeah. And how many varieties of apples do you grow here?
Well, it's kind of hard. I really never have added them up, but our goal over the last few years is to increase our varieties as much as we can. So we've been doing a lot of grafting and budding of old antique varieties that we're searching out. So I would say probably in a couple more years we'll probably have 75 varieties of apples at the farm here. Yeah. It takes several years for a tree to grow and come into bearing, but we have lots of varieties. We're not even picking yet.
Wow. Well, I'm going to walk down there, so if you could join me on the other side.
All right.
And this is one of the apples that you grow here. It's the Honey Crisp.
Yes.
They're beautiful, and they're so delicious.
That is a relatively new apple. It happens to be the rage. That apple sells for more money than any apple grown. There are actually millionaires in Maine that are growing that apple. It's an apple that likes cold weather. It was a University of Minnesota apple developed there. Has a good crunch to it. The literature says do not plant below the Massachusetts border. So we're getting a little too warm to grow it down
just on the edge.
But it's the rage. It actually dethroned the Macoun, which is a cross between a Jersey Black and a Macintosh, and I feel is the best eating apple at the farm, even such. I think,
I'll have to try that one.
This is a great apple.
And I've never seen this one before.
That's a new apple. That's a new apple, Crimson Crisp. I believe it's from the University of Purdue. So it's
a sister of the Honey Crisp.
Yes. So it's a nice eating apple. People really like it. We're just starting to get into production on that.
And of course, the old standby.
Yeah, that's an old favorite, you know. It makes great sauce, good eating apple. not as popular as the Honeycrisp, but still a great selling apple. Like the Cortland in the fall, just been around for a long time. People recognize it and really enjoy it for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah. So, and you make your own?
We have a person make
chunky
applesauce for us.
here?
Yes, we do.
Wow.
Yes, yeah.
Well, we've moved over a few steps to the heirloom or antique apples. These are names I have never heard of. The Smokehouse, Arkansas Black. Are these all grown here as well?
What we did is when I started farming in the early 80s, I put in a variety of McIntosh called Marshall McIntosh. Seems to redden very early. But once you get into later varieties like the Pioneer and the Roger, it becomes a very dull looking McIntosh. So we've been grafting and top working hundreds of Marshall McIntosh trees and grafting on these antique varieties that we've been searching throughout New England for. Really excited about it, like the heirloom tomatoes. People really want to connect to the past. So we started grafting about 4 or 5 years ago. We have some great varieties coming. I think we probably have probably 70, 75 varieties grafted. We're presently picking like probably 40 of them. A few of them are, this apple here is called a lady apple, very sweet,
they're very
decorative.
Cute. Is that a crab apple?
No, it's not a crab apple.
No.
It's actually sweet, good eating apple. It was actually probably 2,000 years old. They say this apple was around when Julius Caesar was around. So that's a
well, she has aged very well.
Yeah, I guess so. But anyways, we have lots of different varieties. This is called the Roxbury Russet, which we're growing a lot of these right now. It's very thin skinned, has a skin like a pear in a way.
It looks like a pear, the color of a pear.
When this settles down in the wintertime, it is an unbelievable eating apple, great storing apple. And this is a little sport. This is the first named apple in America, Roxbury, Massachusetts. They say it's 1600s probably. But this is a little sport that came out called a knobbed russet. I love this apple. You can see it has got knobs all over it. Great eating apple. We have 4 trees. Here's another one.
What causes the knobs?
It just was a sport that developed on a tree. Probably a Roxbury Russet. Apples just appear. Lots of apples are bred and crossed, and you can make a new variety. But sometimes you're just driving down a row of apples, and all of a sudden an apple looks different on a tree. And that's the tree that they propagate the new varieties from, like the Golden Delicious just showed up and they started, whoa, Golden Delicious. But anyways, we have a lot of great varieties here. There's one down here called Jewett Red. That was the early 1800s, Hollis, New Hampshire. Probably Jewett Lane, I would imagine. The gentleman walked around Hollis nodding his head all the time. So the nickname of that apple was Nodhead.
For goodness sakes.
Great eating apple. But we have Esopus Spitzenberg, which was Thomas Jefferson's favorite apple. Famous. This is an old apple. They think it's one of the parents of the Macintosh. It's called Snow Apple. White inside, like white is white. It's unbelievable. But lots of different varieties. Blue Permain and just mixing it up to make it interesting to people.
I want to bite into every one of them.
Yeah, we have people coming in and taking bags and putting the names on them. But this is just a little sampling. We've got a lot of varieties coming in, and a lot of them will probably mix into hard cider blends and things like that. But it's exciting.
Well, now that you mentioned cider,
yes,
can we take a walk outside to the cider mill?
Absolutely. We're making cider today, so it'll be a good day to go.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
Please join us. Well, we've lost Dave to a few customers, or he's giving little lectures on these different apples. But a few that he touched on, these, as I said, well, this is the antique variety, and this is the Smokehouse, and it originated in Pennsylvania around 1800s. And this is the bald one, and it's a great classic, and it's from Massachusetts, 1740. I think they've held up pretty well. And this is a blue pearmain, unique blush bottom. It's very, very pretty. And there's a few more over here. Oh, this one is very lovely. This is the Black Oxford. Almost looks like a plum. And this is, I'm going to murder the name of it. It's Esopus Spitzenberg, discovered in the 18th century in Esopus, New York, and thought to be a favorite of Thomas Jefferson. It's a great apple for baking pies and sought after for making cider. Speaking again of cider, we've got to go back out to the cider mill as soon as we can recapture Dave. Hey Zoe! Hi! You gonna ride in the wagon? Where's your little pumpkin? Where's your little pumpkin? Yeah! Well, look what we've spotted here. A little green wagon and the cutest little shopper, escorted by Mom and Dad, of course, all in search for the perfect pumpkin. As you can see, Zoe was very happy to show off her selection. Now I ask you, what is more adorable, the pumpkin or Zoe? Not even close. Zoe definitely gets my vote. Taking the mystery out of cider making is what this press is all about. Believe me when I tell you, this is a very noisy process, but one I was delighted to learn about. First, freshly picked apples are sent through a thorough washing and deposited into a bin, ready to be sent up on that conveyor belt for crushing. This crushed pulp is then hand spread into large straining cloths and set into racks, stacked approximately 10 high, where the natural juices are extracted over a period of time. And before you know it, the finished product on the shelf is ready to be enjoyed. The yellow caps represent a variety made of 2 apples. The red caps is just a variety of your everyday apples. Then it was down the hill and on to the pumpkin carvers, something I was anxious to see. It wouldn't be the season without jack-o'-lanterns. These artisans certainly have their work cut out for them, no pun intended. So many pumpkins and so many creative carvings makes me wonder where they get their inspiration from. I can tell you it's going to be quite a sight when these are finished, lit, and displayed for viewing. I also had a chance to browse through the rest of the store. The first thing that welcomes you is the tantalizing aroma of the freshly made goodies from their on-site kitchen. Along the enormous penny candy display, at least that's what it was called when I was a girl, to the floral section, both fresh and dried, I couldn't help but linger by the unmistakable fragrance of the dried lavender. All in all, it was another wonderful excursion beyond the garden gate. Hi, I'm Linda Temporino, and today we're not in anybody's garden. We've gone way beyond the garden gate, and today we're in my kitchen. The previous episode, we were at a gigantic garden. We were out in Hollis, and we visited a pumpkin patch, and we had a little tutorial by Dave Ord on the different apples that he grows out there. So we picked up a peck of apples, and we brought them back here. And I'm going to share with you a recipe that I have used for years and years. And most of you are probably familiar with the schools in Nashua. Well, my children, when they were very, very young, went to Broad Street School. And my oldest son came home and he said, "Mommy, I had the best dessert in the world. It was called apple crisp." They had never heard of it before because we had moved here from Europe and he had never heard of apple crisp. So I said, "Really? Where did you get that?" And he said, "In the cafeteria." He said it was absolutely delicious. I said, "Wonderful. See if you can get the recipe." And he did. And I've been using the same recipe for years. And it's, since I have found out, it's very basic. Dave was telling us the best apples to use for cooking, and they've got a chart out at the farm stands. They give you a chart of all the best apples for baking and eating or just snacking. And we've been using Northern Spry, Granny Smith, Cortland's, Pepin, Gravenstein, and Pink Lady. And we have a few samples here. I'm not sure which is which because I didn't label them. So we've got this little gizmo here. I've never used one, so we shall see what happens. This is an apple peeler, and I've been told it works really, really well. So we'll see. We've got these 4 prongs, and you just pop it in there in the middle, pop it down, and wow! That does a great little job. Okay, here's our last apple. Let's give it another whirl. The trick is you gotta get it right in the center, and it doesn't work perfectly because the shape of the apples aren't perfect. So it's gonna skim along and then skip. So I think if you go around twice, it shaves it even better. There we go. Now you got a perfectly shaped apple. Well, I'll spare you the agony of watching me just standing here peeling and slicing a whole bunch of apples. With this amount of apples here, we're just using 5 apples. And I slice them right into the pan. There's nothing worse than getting this all ready and realize you cut too many or you don't have enough. So, and don't forget, you know, these little scraps over here, you put them right into your compost bin or pile or whatever you've got going in your backyard. So try to slice the apples as uniformly as possible so they all bake at the same time. You don't get a real hard one or a real soft overcooked one. So if you slice them rather uniformly, that will help. I'm just going to cut these little pieces up here. So then what I do is I just mix them all up because we've got all different kinds of apples and we've got 5 different types of apples. So I just mix them up with my hands. Of course, your hands are impeccably clean when you're in the kitchen. Don't forget that. And we can just set this aside. I've preheated my oven to 375 degrees and these will bake for 30 minutes. So I'm just going to pat them down a little bit and we'll go on with making the dry ingredients for the crumb top. Start by measuring 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour. A 1/2 cup of rolled oats. I'm using the Irish oats as they seem to have a slightly nuttier flavor, which I prefer. Someone commented it would make a great breakfast. I agree. After all, it does have healthy oatmeal in it. Now in goes a 1/2 cup of brown sugar. I'm using the dark brown sugar since I think the flavor is a bit more intense. I usually mix these ingredients thoroughly before adding the spices. Depending on your taste, add a 1/2 teaspoon to 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. I generally use the full teaspoon. A 1/2 teaspoon of salt. It brightens the taste of the other spices. Nutmeg. I grind my own nutmeg with this handy grater. It only takes a few seconds to do and totally worth the effort. 1 grated nutmeg will produce about 1 tablespoon. In goes the 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. Now comes a 1/2 teaspoon of ginger. Ginger has a wonderful fragrant smell, don't you think? 1 pinch of ground cloves. This was not part of the original recipe. I added this as we like a little kick to our crisp. It certainly is optional though. Once again, blend all these dry ingredients together. Now comes the fun part, adding the butter. Break up 1 stick of unsalted butter into the bowl. I love to incorporate this into the dry ingredients with my hands. It reminds me of gardening, getting my hands right into the thick of things. But if you prefer, use a pastry blender or pulse in a food processor, blending to a crumble stage. Drop over the prepared apples. You don't have to fuss about covering all the apples. If some are exposed, they won't burn, since the baking time is not that long. Bake at 375 degrees for about 30 minutes. So after 30 minutes, this is what you've got. Nice and crisp. The apples are not burnt. You can see that some of them were not covered up with the topping, and they didn't get burnt. And we're going to take a little sample here. Just a wee little sample. And I'll get a little whipped cream. It's really good with vanilla ice cream or whipped cream. Hold on, let me get the whipped cream. Here we go. And now, for the fun, we're going to taste. So to the ladies that worked at Broad Street School Cafeteria in 1968, thank you. We have enjoyed your apple crisp for many years, and my boys will always remember you, whoever you are.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.